Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you what I think are the best parts of homeschooling and the worst or hardest parts of homeschooling. So if you enjoy this type of content and other homeschool and lifestyle content, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. Okay, I want to start off by prefacing this video that I don't think homeschool is either great or hard. I think it's both. As everything in life, okay? It is hard and it's great, not one or the other. So there's a constant struggle, even within a few moments where you're like, oh, this is a really great moment. And then all of a sudden, like, this is the worst day of my life and I wish it was over. And so that happens constantly. Emotions are kind of all over the place. There's a lot of different ages, a lot of different emotions in one place. And so it's just always, it's like a roller coaster ride all the time, every single day. And that doesn't mean that we still can't enjoy. You know, it's the hard moments, the opposition that makes the good moments even better. And so I just wanted to share some of those things that make it difficult, but also make it really good. If you're having a hard time right now with homeschooling, if you're considering homeschooling, whatever your situation might be, just so you kind of have an idea of what it might look like. I just want to be open, transparent about things that I really enjoy about homeschooling and things that are a big struggle for me. And obviously for different people, things might be a struggle and things might be better. You know, everyone's personalities are different, how they handle things are different, the amount of kids they have, their ages. So, you know, there's varying degrees of what this might look like for different people. But I want to share what it looks like for me, just so you can kind of see that perspective. So I'm trying to decide if I should start with the worst stuff or the best stuff, because I'm like, well, maybe we should end on a happier note. So maybe I'll start with like the harder things first. All right, I have my notes here. Maybe I'll lean them up against that. Let's not knock the whole thing over for us. But one of the first worst things or hard things for me, we're starting out like not related to children, okay? Obviously this is related to children, but not directly. So it's grading schoolwork. I feel like that's one of like the worst parts of homeschooling. So I find great satisfaction in going through and like checking stuff and having it clear cut and be like, oh yeah, 100%, or, you know, being able to write the percentages. That's, my brain functions in efficiency, in numbers and all that kind of stuff. And I enjoy that kind of stuff. But when I'm already homeschooling all day and then having to grade so many kids' homework, and then I can't always read what they wrote, and they don't always show their work. And then if I have to go back and tell them that they got something wrong, you know, all the things, like, it takes a long time. It just is a lot of work. I think the time commitment is my biggest struggle with it, is that grading schoolwork takes a big chunk of my time. It's not necessarily something I thought about when I started homeschooling, especially since my kids were all so little. But as they get older, I just have more work to do. I'm hoping, you know, I am very much a hands-on type person. I like hands-on, like in real life books, nothing on screens. But as they are getting into the older grades and especially more advanced math and stuff like that, we could teach it, especially my husband, because he has a math minor. But I don't want to grade it. So that might be something where we transition more to online programs so that it takes that little bit of stress off of me. But that's just something that I don't, right now in particular, I'm like, oh my gosh, on Fridays it's great because we don't do school. And so I'm like, I don't have homework to grade this afternoon. It's so nice, it's schoolwork, you know, it's not homework. Well, it is homework, whatever. I have all the things. What else? So one of the big things, obviously, is having just time for myself that is not being constantly interrupted by kids. You know, there's always something going on. I have 2 little kids, so I have 6 kids total, if you don't know that. So I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, and then my other 4 kids are older. And so they're a little bit more self-sufficient that way. But it's always trying to wrangle those older kids. I mean, that too, but the younger kids. And then they go down for naps, but then they don't always nap for the same time or the same length and stuff. So then they're getting up, you know, so my schedule, like, I'm lucky if I get like an hour's window of time to get any like work done, you know, and I'm like, okay, I gotta grade homework. I gotta do this on YouTube. I gotta do, like, the list is so long. And then just the idea of being able to go out and hang out with other moms, especially where we particularly live. there's not a whole lot, like there is not people in our neighborhood that homeschool. There's one person that just started, but other than that, there wasn't anybody relatively close to us that was homeschooling. And so, you know, it's not like we could just walk over and hang out or something. So a lot of moms are doing other things, and I'm like, oh, it'd be fun to just easily be like, hey, do you want to go work on this or go out to lunch this day? And my schedule is just so crazy right now with all my kids, and my oldest has autism. So even though they're getting old enough to technically be able to babysit, I can't leave him alone with my other kids. And so I could leave my daughter, my oldest daughter is 11. She can watch the kids, but I can't leave him. So it's like a tricky balance trying to figure it all out. So I feel like that's something that's really hard for me. And then this one's gonna be funny because it's under both categories, but one of the hardest parts for me is spending so much time with my kids. I am one of those people, I was all like for public school. Yes, go watch my kids all day. I love that. I do not even cry, like send them away. And only my oldest went to kindergarten for like a month. I've had all my kids go to preschool and stuff for a little while just so I could get a break from that crazy age. But he's the only one that went to kindergarten, and it wasn't for very long. And so I haven't even had that big of a window of that, but I'm like, oh, it sounds so nice. Whereas I know other moms just can't get enough of being with their kids, which is why they love to homeschool. But sometimes it's a lot. Not just for me, but for them. You know, they spend so much time with each other that they have their frenemies. There's some days they really get along. There's some moments they really get along. The next moment they're all trying to kill each other. You know, but they're around each other constantly. So they're really good at playing it with each other when everything clicks. But it's also, I'm around them constantly. So I get annoyed easily too, because I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I have been around 6 kids every single day for like the last 50 years. I'm sick of it. So that's something else that is difficult for me. And then I think this is one that just comes from being a human, but also from being a mom, is just not feeling like you're doing enough or not knowing if you are doing enough. Okay, you're like, I am in charge of my child's education, or if, you know, even in a general sense, if your kids go to public school, if you're not homeschooling them, you always feel like inadequate, that you are messing up your kids, that you're not giving them enough, you're giving them too much, you know, all these different things, you're making them soft. You know, there's a lot of different things floating around in your head that you just feel like you're not sufficient, that it's not enough. You know, that mom guilt comes in. And so I think sometimes that's hard. It's like, oh, am I doing enough? Do they need to, not even just with schoolwork, it's like with extracurriculars, should they be in more things? Should they be in less things? Like how busy should our schedule be? And obviously this is different for every person, but it does weigh on you, and how you decide to fill your time kind of dictates what your life ends up looking like, you know, because it sets trajectories for everybody. Whether you're home for family dinner, whether you're not, whether your kids end up going on and playing sports in college or something, you know, maybe if that's your goal, which, you know, when they're 2 years old, you don't need to decide that. But, you know, there's just a lot of things going around that are very stressful, and you could feel like you're messing up all the time, which it's okay. We all are messing up all the time. But I just think sometimes just that feeling of inadequacy, and am I going to be able to, even so if you are looking to start homeschooling, I feel like this is a big issue that always comes up. Like I can't teach my kids these subjects. I can hardly do them myself, which is how I feel about language arts. Okay, I've always struggled with everything in language arts as far as grammar, writing, spelling, maybe okay, like memorizing, that kind of stuff's not so hard. It's the things that don't follow strict rules that are harder for me, which writing and grammar don't always. And so those types of things are difficult for me and stressful, and I'm always like, go ask your dad. You know, but that's the kind of stuff where we just are like, we can't do this, but there's plenty of resources. We can do it, but it is a feeling that is constantly creeping in, and it's always there. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes friendships in general can be harder. Okay, and I'm not talking about socialization. That's a separate thing. Okay, a lot of times we put those two things together, friendships, like having our kids having friends, and socialization, but they're really not the same thing. So, excuse me. And so, like I said, in our area, there's just not a lot of easy kids to go play with that also homeschool. There is a family that recently started, and they have 2 boys that were over here like every day last week because they're so used to having so many people to play with at public school and stuff that now they're like, we need to play every single day. And my 9-year-old boy was liking it for the most part by the end of the week. I'm like, you don't have to play with them every day if you don't want to. But other than that, there hasn't been anybody for the like 7 years that we've lived here. And so it's been a little bit tricky. There's tons of homeschoolers in the valley that we live in, but just not close to where we are living. And so my kids have to wait for everyone to get home from school, or it's like, it's a holiday, they can go play. But then sometimes people go on vacation. A lot of people travel a lot to where we live and stuff. So anyway, it just makes it really hard to try to set up good friendships. And also, since we are kind of the outsiders, we don't go to public school, in some ways, some kids have kind of, what's the right word? It's like stereotyped us or whatever. They're weird, and so we don't go hang out with them. Not everybody. It's certain age groups that are a little bit cliquey or something like that, so then you have just a harder time incorporating with those age groups because you're different. You don't maybe play all the sports they play. You don't go to the same school they go to. And so you don't know who they're talking about. You don't have all the same friends, like it's just tricky. And so that's been something that's been a little bit difficult for us to navigate as homeschoolers, especially me as an introvert. I'm not the first person to just go out and be like, let's talk to everybody and let's make tons of friends. Like that would be my husband, not me. I'm not very good at that. And so my kids struggle with that too, just because there's not a whole bunch of people in our neighborhood that, that works with. Like I said, we just don't live in an area. I have a friend that does, not in Utah, but outside of Utah, and they just have tons of people that homeschool or are around fairly close to them, and so they're able to get together and do a lot more things. But that's not the case for us, so we have to try to figure out other options or just live with the options that we have. All right, so now we're gonna talk about the best things. Make it more uplifting. Well, I don't think that the hard parts necessarily have to be a downer. It just has hard parts, okay? Like everything in life does. The hard parts and the good parts are sometimes intertwined, right? You can't take one away and still have the other one. And so it's just important to know that there's gonna be difficult points. And that's why it's important to know why you started homeschooling and why you continue to homeschool. Because then when it does get hard and really hard, then you'll know and you'll keep going with your goals. Okay, you'll have a purpose that drives it. So one of the best parts for me is always learning. And I love this so much. And it can be, the way you decide to always be learning for you and for your kids can be very conventional, more like streamlined public education. It can be very unconventional, depending on you, your personality, how you like to learn. But something that I have really loved, and I feel like homeschool reignited for me, was just my love of learning. In college, I loved to learn so much. And then, graduated, we moved back east so my husband can go to graduate school. And I was a young mom. We had several kids very, very quickly. And so for like 5-ish years, I just, it wasn't like I didn't have purpose, because I did, I had lots of little kids, but it wasn't quite the same. I wasn't sitting there like, oh, I want to learn, and remembering how much I loved learning and loved teaching when I was in school. And so then when we started homeschooling again, I'm like looking for all these things, started reading more books about education. When we found out my son had autism, I started reading more books about that. My bachelor's degree is in human development, so I've read tons more books about human development, and have always loved to read, but it kind of got lost somewhere in everything of becoming a mom, moving across the country, doing all these things, living a completely different place, having a different life for a while, something that was hard and really good for us, but it was just not it was a kind of a confusing personality time for me, identity time for me. And then when we step back into homeschool, it's like, wait, these are the things that I like to do. And there's still some of those things that maybe I don't get to do as much now because I am so consumed with homeschooling my kids. But just being able to step back in and always learning, like learning with them, even like grammar, I understand it way better now than I ever did before. I'm like, oh, that's how it works. You know, my kids, it's clicking for them at the same time it's clicking for me. I'm like, we're all learning this together. This is great. So just little things like that, where it's just always learning, you know, with geography, with reading historical fiction to my kids and all these things. It's just a really good learning environment. And I'm just very grateful for that. That's one of the best things for me, for like, of homeschooling. I don't know what I'm saying. All right, so this one I mentioned was in both categories, okay? And it's spending a lot of time with all of our kids. And sometimes this is a really good thing, right? And sometimes it's not a great thing. Sometimes you're just like, I just need to be alone. But I feel like it can be a really good thing for a lot of different reasons. One of the big things is just being able to gain those relationships with our kids. There's so many kids I see around, they go to school right at like 8 in the morning, and then they get home at 4, and then they go to the next sport and the next thing, you know, or their parents work and stuff. So they just don't see each other, don't hang out at all, don't talk a lot. You know, they might not even have time for family dinner. Life is just very busy. It's always go, 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 go. And so for us in homeschooling, being able to sit down together, you know, and have discussions in the scriptures and about different topics, and if issues come up, we can discuss them then. We're not always good at it, but we try, you know. And so I feel like just being able to see my kids in a learning environment, in a play environment, seeing them in all these different environments and being around them that time helps me get to know them better and deeper, and we can talk about issues, we can discuss them as they come up. And you know, some people might see that as not a good thing, but I feel like it's just really good to be able to address things when they're happening, because you either forget about them, or maybe they think they're not that important if they kind of get pushed aside, or they come home from school and everything, the hustle and bustle, it just never gets addressed. And so I'm just very grateful for that and for the amount of time that we get to spend with them. And then we also have the freedom to be able to go do other things. You know, maybe we get to travel when people don't, or we could go to a museum or just go on a little adventure. You know, I'm not, I am not the super adventurous type, just like a spur of the moment, all of a sudden. That's hard for me, especially when I have 2 little kids, but just things like that. You just have those opportunities because you are around them all the time. You have that freedom to be able to do that. Another one of the best things about homeschooling is being able to limit our kids from the gunk of the world. And I know some people are like, oh, you're sheltering your kids, you know, and hiding them from all these things. But to be honest, everyone is sheltering their kids from something. Okay, whether they acknowledge it or not. Okay, whether you are Christian or not Christian, you know, if you're telling your kids certain things about Christianity because you don't believe in it, you are sheltering them in some way. Or maybe you are okay with them saying certain things and not being exposed to other things. You know, you're sheltering them in some sort of way. You can read this book and you can't read this book. You know, there's always things that we're doing that is sheltering our kids. And we look at sheltering as them not, you know, them living under a basket. That's not even the right word. What do people say? See, I'm sheltered. I don't even know the words. It's more that I'm just like, can't think of stuff off the top of my head like that. But, you know, it's like, where were you living? You know, apparently in the backwoods where nobody was telling you anything. And so just those types of things, I think we all need to remember that we are sheltering or guiding, if you want to look at it that way, guiding our kids in some sort of way that aligns with how we believe. And we don't all believe the same way. You know, some of us believe in a God, some of us don't. And so you are guiding your kids in that way, a way that you were raised. Maybe it's a political thing. You know, there's all sorts of ways to guide or shelter our children. But I really appreciate the idea of being able to filter through some of the gunk, and also just not all the social pressures. Again, some people might view this as a bad thing, but I love the fact that my kids aren't coming up to me and being like, I need this brand of shoes and this brand of shirt and this brand of pants. I'd still say no, because I'm just like, no, we're not gonna spend money on those things. Go make your own money if you wanna buy them. But I like that they don't have all those pressures from school, the need to look like everybody else all the time and have the same clothing as everybody else, and maybe have all the makeup and the nails done and the hair colored and all these different things. That's really nice. And then also the swear words, like our kids could say swear words and just not even know that's what they are, because me and my husband just don't swear. We just never have found any value in doing that. So our kids don't really know what they are. You know, we bring things up and address them as they come, but also just being able to talk to them about sex, you know, to talk to them about those types of things and have good conversations about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and all these different things, that they're not just hearing things in passing in the school hallway or with a friend, like, did you hear this? And I heard this, you know, and all that kind of stuff, and being exposed to all the gossip of who's going with who and what's going on and all that kind of thing. So again, some people might view it as sheltered, but I also don't think that my kids are sheltered. They know a lot about the world. They're very well read. They understand a lot of things. Me and my husband constantly are looking at each other like, there is no way in heck I knew about that when I was this age, and stuff like that and stuff. So we still don't know about some of the things that they know about. And we're like, how did you learn that? Not in a bad way, but just and so just things like that. I'm just very grateful to be able to have an environment where we can have open, honest conversations about things in the real world and not have to worry about it. All right, I kind of already mentioned this one when I was talking about spending so much time with our kids, but I think another great benefit is being able to do things when everybody else is in school. This doesn't always work depending on where you live. So let me give you an example. So some people, like if you live in southern states where it's warm all the time, or like splash pads are open all the time, or swimming pools are open all the time, you can go to those places when everybody else is in public school. So where we live, splash pads are only open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, which is basically when school is out for summer. Okay, you might get 1 week on one end and 1 week on the other end, but they're in school the rest of, like they're out of school the rest of the time. So everybody's gonna be at all the places during the same time that you can actually use them. So things like that, depending where you live, you might have better access to certain things all year round and you be able to utilize them when everybody else is in public school. So museums are a good, like this is a good resource for that. There's, you know, we don't have a lot of museums right where we live. We'd have to drive a few hours to get to some good ones, but the few times that we have gone during the school year, you just get a lot of little kids. You know, there's no bigger kids or anything like that. So you have some of those options where you might be able to go do some things or have like the park all to yourself or something when other people are in school, which is kind of a nice little perk of it and benefit. Again, depending where you live, you might have better perks than maybe where we live. That was always my hope. I'm like, all the kids are going back to school. Maybe we could go to the swimming pool and nobody would be there. But as soon as everybody goes back to school, they change all the hours and it's an outdoor pool. So it's only really open again until Labor Day. So, because it just starts to get too cold really fast. So anyway, hopefully you live in a place where you have better options than we do, but that is also a great benefit. One of the best things about homeschooling is being able to do things when everybody else is in school. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment down below and let me know some of the things that you think are the best about homeschooling, maybe some of the things you struggle with that maybe aren't so good. We would all love to hear. I think it helps build community, helps strengthen us too. It helps us feel like we're not alone in the struggles that we go through, but also in just recognizing the good. So put those down in the comments so we can all read through them, and remember to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.